Hello, everyone. This is George Diaz, and I'm bringing you another episode of Transforming Small Business Thinking, Removing the Obstacles. And today, my guest is Jim McBrayer, a longtime customer of mine. Jim, thank you for joining me.
Welcome.
So we were introduced by a friend that we have in common, and a while back, he was having a hard time getting his in-person course. He trains sales teams, and he needed a way to make it available online. And so our team, we do that sort of work. And so, gosh, that was 3+ years ago. We've revisited that. We've done other things for him. But it's probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were talking on the phone, and he's telling me about what this pandemic has done for him. And I go, gosh, this is something I think a lot of people can benefit from. I know I benefit from it. And I read a book that we'll be talking about that he recommended, and how that can help us as we're taking on these challenges that, COVID has thrown at us, to see how we kind of get going. So how's that for an intro for you, Jim?
That's perfect. Dead on.
So Jim, share with me like the story you were telling me about, the changes you made late 2019 and into 2020.
Sure. Somebody once said that if you listen to your customers, they'll tell you what business you're actually in. And so, I was thinking about that at the end of last year, that I do a lot of workshops, a lot of sales training, and kind of a derivative of that, my customers are asking me to work one-on-one coaching individual reps. And sure, if I can bring value, I'll do that. But I wasn't pursuing that. It was just, that was coming to me naturally. I was pursuing getting more and more workshops. And I remember saying in one of the workshops, any job, there's parts of the job that you're just passionate about, at least you hope you are. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fall into your vision. But there's always, in every job, there's part of the job that, well, it's just work. It's not terrible. It's just something, something you got to do. And that part of it for me was travel. I love being in front of the audience. I love working with the groups, but it was stressful for me just to, make sure you're making it to the airport on time and you get through security. And once you get there, you got to find your rental car and find the hotel you're heading at. And the next morning, you got to find out where the workshop is. And if I could just click my heels and make all that happen, that would knock out the worst part of that job. And so I started tying those two things together and said, you know what? People want me to do more and more coaching. Why don't I do that coaching? And the only way to really make that effective, to make it costly effective, to my clients, was to do it virtually. And I think that was the preference. So, this was maybe in November. So I'll just put my shoulder to this and see what happens. I'll push it for about a month and see how it goes. And it didn't take me long. It's like, I've got a book of business here, and with all the workshops I got set up for the rest of the year, I'm loaded for bear. So I had a great first quarter.
So what you did is you basically went through your Rolodex, for those of us that are old enough to remember Rolodexes, and you just started calling people, hey, I'm doing more one-on-one coaches. We do it virtually. Here's the price. Do you want it? And people were saying, yeah, Jim, I got this one guy I want you to train. I got that other guy. And so you've got a business going.
Yep. It was almost easier than that. I mean, in some cases, it's almost like, that's what I've been asking you to do.
Why did it take you so long?
Yeah, right. So I started doing that, and the fortunate is I had no idea about the pandemic, right? Yeah. I didn't do the virtual stuff because of I knew before.
But as a result, you're paying your $14 a month for a Zoom account and talking to people online, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I already knew how Zoom was working, and there's always little things that you kind of work out, that you don't know how to do something until you actually do it and get the repetitions in. So I got quite a few repetitions in when the pandemic, really kind of hit us up here in Georgia, which was, in March, kind of early March. And then I started getting the phone calls from all the workshops that I had lined up. And it's like, hey, we're going to do it, but we're postponing it.
Yeah.
My last workshop was in early March. That was the last one. The rest of them have gotten postponed.
And that was your bread and butter, right?
That was it. That was almost 100%. So my income is still pretty much what it was last year. I would be having, a record year like a lot of people would if it wasn't for the pandemic. But fortunately, I'm in a situation that No, I'm starving. I mean, my income is what it was last year, but it's not the workshops. It's the virtual, one-on-one coaching.
Yeah, so you made changes back then in order to avoid the travel. And now this business that was just kind of like interesting is now the business, right? And I think you were telling me you may not go back to doing workshops, maybe.
I don't think I'll always do workshops because there's leads that come from that. It kind of lays the foundation. But when you couple those two things together, then the business is it's coming back. I've got the next one scheduled in the next month, so starting to get the workshops coming back, but you don't know where that's going to lead. So it's another arrow in the quiver, but it's a strong one, right? And it still revolves around the same thing.
Yeah. No. So we're talking here, and you're going in there, and you said, "Hey, George, have you read the book Build to Sell?"
Yeah.
And I go, honestly, I haven't. And then you started telling me about it. And that's really another thing that got me going. So a lot of us, I mean, nobody was ready for the pandemic. Nobody was ready for the changes it would entail. I mean, just imagine you're a restaurant, a hotel, a travel agent, and you're not ready for it. And then you're not systematized such that you can kind of like say, okay, that'll run itself while I figure out this new thing, right?
Exactly.
So how did that play into this for you?
So I was talking to someone and they were saying, hey, have you ever read any of Michael Gerber's stuff, all the E-Myth?
Yeah, the E-Myth books.
Yeah, I've read all of his stuff. And they said, well, have you read this book? I can't even remember the name of the author now. Do you remember the author of Built to Sell?
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Right. So they mentioned that, and I thought, well, if it's in the same sentence with Michael Gerber, it must be pretty good stuff. So I read it, and it reads like a novel. It doesn't read like a textbook. So
it's a story.
Yeah, it's got a story to it. It's got drama to it.
Yeah, it's a John Warrillow.
Okay.
Warrillow, Built to Sell.
Built to Sell. And so the concept of Built to Sell is, as an entrepreneur, small business, you need to build your business like you're trying to sell it.
No, and by the way, the subtitle is Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You.
Yeah, there it is, right? So that's what most of us fall into is when we leave corporate America and we start our own business. That was my route. So now you're your own boss and you got the worst boss ever, right? Because he's working you to death. So you have a good business, a thriving business, but if you're not working, it's not making money.
Right.
As the Built to Sell book goes, which is the story of a lot of us, is this guy goes to the guru and says, hey, listen, I'm just burned out. I'm ready to sell my business. And they were already friends. And he says, well, okay, bring me your financials and bring me the story and we'll talk about it. And he did. And here's the financials. Here's everything works. And his buddy says, you don't have any value. Your business has no value yet. And the reason it didn't really have any value was because the owner was the business.
Yeah.
And until you can get the systems, right? So like everything that you're doing is kind of in your head, you got to get it to the system. And it's the same thing Michael Gerber talks about. Once you have a system, and the system being so good that it's written out that you can hand it to a new employee, and without them asking you any questions, they can go build whatever the product is that you need them to build. If they still have to ask you questions, then you're still building it out. Once they build it, in other words, you don't have to build it anymore. You've created the system. And that's, in short, that's what the book is saying. The value of your company is the value of the systems that you have. And if you don't have any systems, you have no value.
Yeah, and now the example in the story, and again, it's a fun read. It's not very long. And it talks about an agency, which really rung true to me because, we're not an agency, but we follow that model. And you're basically doing a lot of marketing work or a lot of custom work for a lot of people. And for some of them, you're charging a good piece of money, but everything is a custom solution. As a result, it either falls on the owner of the company, or he's got to figure out ways to create mini versions of them. So it's almost like you'd have to find people that could go on stage and do your workshops as well as you could without stealing your customers, without doing it wrong,
Right.
And for me, it's the same. And so one of the key things that the book teaches is you got to find the one thing you're really, really good at and systematize that, because you can't systematize I know I can't systematize my custom delivery method.
Right. Yeah. And that's what the author is talking about. He says you need to look at whatever it is you're selling, because a lot of us are in the service industry. That's what we think about. It's a service that we bring. And he said you've got to transition that into product. So whatever your service is, you got to be able to convert that into a product. And so what I was telling you about that I was excited about, so for about 3 months now, we've actually been taking what we do and we've created products behind that. And the products, we kind of explain it to simplify it. So if you think about a sales funnel, and there's kind of 4 stages to our sales funnel, from getting an appointment to what do you say on the first appointment, to the questions that you ask, and then finally the proposal you put together. If you think about those 4 stages, we've developed a process that we can go in with a couple different questionnaires, one to our customer's customer, the other one's to our customer. They fill out the questionnaire. That's the raw ingredients that we need to pour into our process. That out the other end comes the 4 products that they need, that their salespeople need, right? So even if you got the sales training or you don't, you can take these products and you can go out and start delivering the message that you need to be delivering. So once we've created those processes, and we have created those, another concept that I've learned over the years, and I think it's a great one, is the concept of the MVP, not most valuable player, but minimal viable product. So for most of us, when we start to develop the product, it's like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And before we know it, it's been 10 years and we still haven't launched it.
Yeah.
The concept of the minimal viable product is get something that customers are interested in. It doesn't take you very long. Go show it to them. See if there's any interest. If there's not, it's a good thing you didn't waste 10 years trying to perfect it. If there is, then you've got a minimal viable product and you start making it better. So we're probably in our 8th generation of developing these products. It probably gets better each time,
Sure.
but it's able to our customers. And it's something that we can create, that my team can create without me, and sell it to our products, and they can start to our customers, and they can start utilizing it right away.
Yeah, and that's the saying. Perfection is the enemy of good enough.
Yeah.
And we recommend that to our customers a lot. And then to me, it's interesting. We can do a lot of things. Like right now, I didn't think we'd be doing this, but we're captioning videos. Go figure. Because there's a demand for that, right? But if we said, look, we're only going to do these 2 things, these 3 things, and then we get really, really good at that thing. And for us, it would be building entry-level membership sites, because we spit those out like they're nothing. And if that's all I did, and it's interesting because the mentor in the book challenges, it's like, yeah, you got this $50,000 deal. I want you to say no, because you've got to get the systematized product to be the one that supports you. And the guy was like just gritting his teeth and going, this is going to kill me. And it worked out for him. But it's like, I think we all have to do that. Instead of getting into this custom service business, how do we find 1 good thing, 2 good things that you're really good at, productize them, and then ride your business on top of that? Because that turns out to be a sellable business, whether you want to sell it or not.
Exactly. So it's all about the depth. So when you get known for the depth of like the small thing that you do, but you've got the depth, when you're that niche, and that runs counter to what we've been taught for so long. It's like you want to be broad to do all these things. It's like, well, if you're broad and you're kind of superficial, a lot of people can do that. But when you have the depth in one area, so that when somebody mentions that, it's kind of like, yeah, that's what George does, or that's what Jim does. And it's like, that's how people get to know you. That's your brand at that point. That's what you do.
Yeah, it's right. And so you get that additional benefit, which is now your brand is so niched. You may be unpopular everywhere, but in that small little niche, assuming it's big enough to generate enough business, that really is something that drives you.
Yeah, I heard once before that when you really have a strong brand, that it will repel as many people as it attracts, which is actually a good thing, right? Rather than spending a lot of time just to get to the very end, they go, I don't think it's a good fit for us. So right away, McDonald's. What do you think about with McDonald's? And for
it repels an awful lot of people.
It does.
But
and for other people, it's like
the drive-through line is always full.
Yep. That was the other thing I heard about branding. Branding is about consistency, right? Brand means I know what I'm going to get. In McDonald's, you know what you're going to get. And that was also kind of the metaphor this guy used, was when you have systems, You don't have to go out and hire the most expensive people, right? A PhD and whatever it is that you do. When you have systems, you can hire a minimal skill set. Not a zero skill set. It's like you got to be able to read, you got to be able to have a good work ethic or whatever it is. But like if you use and that was the idea with McDonald's, was we don't have to hire a celebrity chef to come cook for us. We can hire a 16-year-old kid in high school as long as they can read and write and they got a good work ethic and all that. We teach them the system and they can produce the burger we need them to produce every time. When we think about our business that way, and that's when you get the productivity, and that productivity, that's when you can make money and deliver something that is just spot on for what your customers want and need.
It gets you into the profitability, which is also what makes your business worth more. Because, like I know, and a lot of times with our custom projects, again, you can charge a hefty amount for them, but you're taking on risk, right? Because it could go wrong, something happens, and then you got to eat the cost or additional work. But then those projects are harder to sell, as opposed to, can I get, like in their group, they had like sales guys, and it's kind of like, I want you to sell one of these a month, one of these a week. So their sales guys had one of these, they were selling logos, one logo a week. That's all you got to do, which doesn't seem overwhelming. And then if you could hire 2 people to sell 1 logo a week, you could hire 2 more. And so again, you're cranking, your sales teams are happy, your delivery folks are happy. You're not having to pay them exorbitant amount of money, because their expertise is in your system, not in some proprietary thing that they know. So cool. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. As we look at these, can't meet in person times, what are the systems that we either have and can really leverage, or what are the ones that we need to put in place so that our business becomes less of dependent on ourselves and more on something that can be systematized, especially if you identify a demand, which, anybody who's in the sign business right now is doing so well. Everywhere you go, there's masks must be worn here, 6 feet apart decals on the ground. There are opportunities. You just have to be in the right place to be able to leverage them, or to think to leverage them, right?
Well, that's one of the things about, everybody can see the negative side of the pandemic. That's pretty easy. I think the part of our job as an entrepreneur is, where's the opportunity? Where's my place to contribute that I can help during the pandemic? And for a lot of salespeople, most of the people that I work with they're commercial and they're industrial, and they're accustomed, and so are their customers, to meeting face to face. I tell the salespeople it's face to face. These people, that's what we've been taught our entire careers. Like, you got to get belly to belly with these people. And all of a sudden, the pandemic says, the customer's not going to allow you to do that. So what are you going to do? Well, you can crawl in a hole, or you can say, well, I hear about this Zoom calls, these virtual calls. Maybe I can, I read a stat the other day that in, I think it was December, that Zoom there were 10 million Zoom calls a day in December. In March, there were 200 million. In April, it was 300 million. So my point is, if it's at 300 million, for the most part, these are sales calls, different types of meetings, but a lot of them are sales calls. It's never going to go back to 10 million a day. No. Now, I'm not saying it's going to keep growing to 10 million, 200 million and more every month, but there's a portion of that now. So imagine
there's a portion that's never going back.
There's a big portion, and a big part of that is being driven by the customer. The customer said, I don't want you to come see me and have an hour and a half call, and we can do a Zoom call that's only going to take 15 minutes. Or I don't want you coming to see me and talk to all my employees and pulling them off task.
Right,
so
right.
Found out that the main reason they weren't doing it before is there's a lot of people that are just, we're not early adopters to technology. But once you're forced to do it, it's like, well, I know how to do it now. Why would I not do it? It's easy.
Yeah, and again, you're talking about that whole commercial, a lot of those industrial, those businesses haven't been impacted by the pandemic, necessarily. They're still buying paint. They're still buying, the kind of supplies that your sales guys typically sell. So it's a matter of, and they got to buy from somebody.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because for most of these salespeople, they have different segments that they're selling to, whether it's paint, lawnmowers, whatever it may be. There's different segments. And so one of the things we talk about is follow the money. There's certain segments that, especially a few months ago, but even now, it's like they're done. You know what I mean? They're not, restaurants, for example, retail, it's way off. But then you look at other businesses like Zoom, that's the best thing that could have possibly happened to them. Amazon, any type of home delivery. So follow the money trail for your own business and figure out, okay, there's certain people I know they're hurting right now. I can't help them with what I do. But there's other industries that I have to help them. Somebody has to help them figure this out.
Yeah, and like in mine, I mean, this program is part of like a resource for those kind of small business owners, but we're in the business of helping people build online courses, online portals, places where people can store a lot of resources that might complement a Zoom sales process. Right. So we're starting to get, I mean, we haven't seen a huge upswing, but we're starting to see an upswing from people that are now going, okay, the dust has settled a little bit. We know what the new normal is, and it's not going to be what it looked like in December. And they're going, hey, George, let's talk about how we can, complement our Zoom and our, whatever else we've been doing with some sort of online material. So, again, we didn't plan for this, but we're kind of the kind of people that can help, in situations like this.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do, right? As an entrepreneur, is to adapt and figure out, we didn't cause the virus, but now that it's here, how can we help? What can we do?
Yeah.
Figure that out. And it's like the market created itself. If you can figure out where the opportunity is, that's where billionaires get made.
Good. Well, thank you, Jim. This has been helpful for me. I hope our listeners say the same. And, thank you for breaking out of your busy day for me.
You're more than welcome. I enjoyed it. Thanks, George.